And I asked him, Dad, when you played football and there were all those people watching, were you not afraid? Like, how did you prepare for a game? Like, were you not freaked out that you were playing at Flamengo? There was all thousands upon thousands of people looking at you. And he just looked at me and he goes, what people? The game started when I took a shower in the morning. It's all in your head. It's how you prepare and how you practice. And that always start talking about clarity, because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what the destination is, it's kind of hard to get there. Making value-driven decisions, checking in with yourself and what your values really are, and having a blueprint for your goals that are in alignment, are in congruence with that. I think once you have these aligned actions, then that's when transformative clarity and belief come in.
Olá a todos, o meu nome é Mafalda e este é o podcast SuperUS. Aqui vou falar de saúde, seja comida, exercício físico, sono ou tudo o que te possa ajudar a ser a tua versão super. O objetivo da SuperUS é conseguir criar uma comunidade de outliers, pessoas fora do normal, pessoas que querem estar constantemente a melhorar e que não se contentem com estar bem, mas querem estar ótimas, pessoas que não têm medo de lutar pelos objetivos e pessoas que querem ser super. Hello, my name is Mafalda. Welcome to SuperUS podcast. Today we have the pleasure of having with us Carina Lawson. Carina is a business efficient consultant. She's an executive mentor, certified in high performance coach, and the founder of Ponderlily Paper Planners. Welcome, Carina. Nice to having you here.
Thank you, Mafalda. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm thrilled to be here, and I've been really looking forward to our conversation. So I can't wait to dive into some really important topics with you and your audience today.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it will be a good start. Just presenting a little bit of who you are and what you do, and also how you support people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I help people mostly, I typically work with working professionals, and I help them find a place where ease and efficiency exist. I find that when working with people and talking about productivity, they feel that they need to be on the go all the time, or when talking about their business or when they're in a career transition, people talk about work-life balance a lot. And that can look quite different to many different people. So they feel that they have to do work-life balance one way, when that's not necessarily the case. Productivity really is personal. And the goal is not necessarily to be productive all of the time, because we're not robots. We are humans having a human experience, and being efficient and feeling fulfilled and feeling productive is way more important and gives you so much more joy. So people who want to perform at a higher level in their career, that they really love and feel connected to, while really safeguarding their energy, their boundaries, or if they're going through a career transition, I essentially help people who want more from work to weekend. They want more. They want more career fulfillment. They want more health, and they want to really be clear on who they are and how they show up and want to serve in the world. And so that's when we get to work together and create a plan that is curated just for them, that feels right, sits well, and finally allows them to find that place where ease and efficiency exist, where they can be at their best.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you said about productivity, because sometimes productivity is associated with working more. And productivity is what allows us to work less, in fact, is what allows us to find, as you said, the ease between between the work and the personal and the professional life. So I think that is really important to understand that productivity doesn't mean to work more. It's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
It's finding this efficiency, as you said. Yeah.
Exactly. And even for the people who on the outside look like they're doing all the things, they might not necessarily be happy, because no one has ever stopped and asked them, what is it that you want? What is What would you want your day to look like? And they think it's not attainable. And, and I don't blame them, because what they see online and, is so many entrepreneurs online these days. They have this routine where they wake up at 5 in the morning and they journal and they cold plunge and they do yoga. And I'm like, where are their kids? Because I'm trying to get my kids breakfast. And, biggest misconception that people have is that, Carina, how do you have a job from 9 to 5? How do you take care of twins and you run a paper company and you have coaching clients? Do you sleep? And I'm like, yes. And I'm not even a morning person. I found a rhythm and an alignment, and that's what I love helping people with. Your life as a working professional doesn't have to look like somebody else's. And that is such a gift, to be honest, when you find that.
Yeah, I think that is super important to understand that we are all different, and because of that, we all need different things. And one thing that I think it will be nice to also to ask you that sometimes and you said that you also work with helping people achieve their high performance, and sometimes we associate the high performance with just sports or top management leaders like CEOs, and high performance doesn't need to be just for these two groups of people, because in my opinion we can all strive to be our best version. How do you think you define high performance, and how do you help people finding their best version, and maybe also deconstruct a little bit this definition of high performance being only for these two groups?
Absolutely. That is such a great question. Thank you for asking that, because there's a common, you're right, there's a common misconception about high performance and working with a coach being reserved for a very, very small proportion of the population. And to put it in context, my dad, because we are Brazilians, and I come from a very long line of footballers. So my granddad and my dad were professional football players. And so I would watch my dad practice day in, day out, day in, day out. I actually learned how to ride a bicycle on a football pitch in Joinville, where I'm from. And so I watched him have a coach. I watched him become a coach. And so my dad always instilled in us is practice makes you play at your best. It doesn't make you perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from those things. And later in life, I asked him, Dad, I'm really struggling with work. This was a few years before I had my children, because again, I was trying to do all the things. I'm really struggling with how people perceive these projects that I was doing, because at the time I was already thinking, this can't be healthy. Because at one point in my life, Mafalda, I was overscheduled, I was overweight, I was overburdened, and I was successful. Yeah. I was working myself to the ground. And I just felt like there has to be a better way, and I just don't understand. But if I stop doing this, if I stop doing the work, being a business analyst, then what do I do? Mm-hmm. What else is there? And I asked him, Dad, when you played football and there were all those people watching, were you not afraid? How did you prepare for a game? Were you not freaked out that you were playing at Flamengo? There was all thousands upon thousands of people looking at you. And he just looked at me and he goes, what people? The game started when I took a shower in the morning. It's all in your head. It's how you prepare and how you practice. And that's when everything clicked for me. So high performance basically means, for everybody, I'm sure everybody experienced this at one point in their life, where you felt that you were just in flow and you were working at your best, and things were just, you were good at something, or you are good at something. And that's what it is when you bring the best version of yourself to the pitch, to the game, to work, to your home, and you're in flow, oh, I'm a good cook, or I'm really when I'm present with my children, I'm really in it, and this moment is just absolutely amazing and I could do anything. So working as a high performance coach allows me to work with people at different tenets of their life, whether it's their physiology, their psychology, their influence, their productivity, clarity. We always start talking about clarity because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what the destination is, it's kind of hard to get there. And we ask questions in different tenets of life where people aren't usually asked. Like, in everyday conversation, nobody asks you, so what makes you work at your best? Like, what do you need to really work at your best? So those are some of the questions that we ask in high performance coaching that kind of get you to think about how you can work at different areas of your life to really have a transformative experience and practice it, right? Like, take stock. So those are just some of the things that we get to work on. And I have something like for your listeners, I've got like a free guide, which is called the Peak Balance Blueprint. And it has lots of strategies in there that might be game changers for you. Like, especially if you feel like you're part of an ever spinning world and you're too busy for anything. And if you want to learn a little bit more about high performance, like you're going to get that here today.
Yeah. Thank you for your answer, Carina. And one thing that you said is that the first step of trying to perform at your best is trying to understand where you want to go. How do you think you can help people trying to find this clarity on or where they want to go?
I think a lot of the times we don't have these conversations with somebody who's going to hold their goals and be in their corner, right? Like, it took me, like, when I worked with an executive coach who was absolutely amazing, and I had just had, and this was my very first experience with coaching, and I had just had my 2 children. I had twins. I went back to work after 2 months, and I was like, I'm going to be even better than before. And because I have to prove to everyone that I'm better than before. Don't know why. And then she's like, who are all these people that you have to prove yourself to? And I was like, I don't know. Isn't that what people expect women to do? She's like, is it? And I was like, am I making this up? And, so we just have these conversations that we wouldn't normally have with our friends, right? We wouldn't normally have with our peers and our colleagues. And a coach really gets to push you and help you hold that vision that you might not necessarily communicate to other people. Like, because of, you might want to say something to a coach that's not expected in your culture or in how you were raised, or that you might not even think is possible. Like, Mafalda, honestly, I did not think that as an MBA trained business analyst, which I still get to do because I love my job, I'm very good at it. I had no idea it was creative, and that one day I would create, stationery products that look like this, and that would be featured in Forbes. I had no idea because, like, I didn't know what my passions were. I didn't know what made me light up. And when you find those things and you explore, it's incredibly surprising how the world can align in your favor to attract those things. It's just been astounding to me.
Yeah, amazing. And one thing that I think is important to try to find clarity on what we want is allowing ourselves to have the time to stop and think on this clarity and what we want, because sometimes, as you said, we are juggling between work, family, parenting, if that's the case, and we don't have the time to stop and think on what we want. And here we go back to what we said in the beginning. The productivity allow us to have more time for what we want, and what we want could be understanding this with more clarity where we want to go. Queria fazer uma pausa neste vídeo para te falar do meu programa Super, o meu programa de Health and Performance Coach. São 6 sessões individuais ao longo de 10 semanas. Vamos definir quem tu queres ser, quais os teus objetivos e o que é que tens que fazer para lá chegar. Vamos perceber como é que podes melhorar o teu bem-estar físico, mental, emocional e espiritual para alcançar a tua melhor versão. Se tiveres alguma dúvida, podes consultar superus.pt/produtos, podes ainda enviar e-mail para mafalda.superus@gmail.com ou então enviar uma mensagem para as redes sociais. I remember that I had a teacher in university that he was always saying that we cannot have the best of the two worlds. In Portuguese make more sense, but it's basically that we cannot have it all. And I think a lot of people have this as a belief, as a strong belief, that we cannot be high performance in our career if we have kids, because we need to choose either we are taking care of our kids, either we are being our best version in work. How do you help people trying to find this balance and also deconstruct this belief that we cannot be our best version in these two areas, the parenting and the work life?
Okay, that's a great question. Let me give you an analogy. When you're baking a cake and you have to measure the flour, right? You get the scale out and then you put the flour on it. Is that what you do? When people think of balance, they normally think, work and life. And my daughter was baking a cake the other day and she was telling her twin sister, like, oh, before we put the flour, we have to set the scale to 0. And that's what most people forget. They're talking about like, but I have to put the things on. But if the scale is not right, if it's not calibrated, if it's not set to 0, it is never going to balance anyway, ever. It's always going to be off. So it's no wonder that for those of you who may be working super hard and you're doing your best for your family and you still feel like you're not doing everything, I would then ask you, are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Because there's a very good scientific reason why you should be doing those things. And we forget because of the everyday, the hustle and the bustle, right? And then on the other hand, I question this whole concept of balance. Is balance real? Yes, it is, because in physics, we know that balance is real. When we're riding a bike, does balance exist? Does the equilibrium exist? Yes, it does, but we forget that we have to sway side to side to calibrate, to come to center. We know that we have to lean one way and the other. It's very minute and you don't always see it. But again, if your bike isn't right, if your tires aren't taken care of, you're not going to come out of that ride very well. So I urge you to think of this. If the example of the cake doesn't land or the bike, let me just ask you this, right? When you are in a buffet and it's an all-you-can-eat buffet, just because you can eat it all, it doesn't mean that you should, because you're not going to feel well.
Yes.
And you're not going to want to. Like, sometimes you just don't want to. But, we don't ask ourselves those questions. It's the automatic, right? It's the default instead of living by default instead of living by design. And stopping to really think, am I hungry? Do I need this right now? So that's where we would start the conversation, because balance can look like something different to everybody. And we all know what the Pinterest and the picture perfect version of balance is. And it may not necessarily be what you need or what you want even.
I agree with you. And it's what you were saying about the sleep is basically it's back to the basics. Back to the basics of nutrition, exercise, and sleep. If everything, we can, of course, that sometimes we are always everything is on fire, and when everything is on fire, we cannot think about the basics of sleep. We just want to put the fire down. We are not thinking about how to prevent a fire. We are just on the corrective. We just want the corrective action. We don't want the preventive yet. But sometimes it's really important to back to the basics, as you were saying, like the sleep and the nutrition and everything, to be able for us, as the analogy that you were saying about the scale, and be us being the scale. If the scale is not right, we are not perform at our best. So we need to put ourselves, as an individual, in our best, to be able to find this balance between all the work and the professional and the personal life. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree.
And like a lot of people just say like, oh, I'll just sleep on the weekend. And I'm like, okay. Then that's when we need to have like a whole physiology session. We're like, for your cells in your body, for your brain to function at its best, it needs good quality fuel and it needs to restore and recharge, at the
Yeah.
very basic of it. But like people like love to fight me on this. And I'm like, please go to sleep.
Yes, I totally agree. Do you feel in your clients that there is some disparities between the of course men and women? Because of course that in terms of the parenting, there is certain aspects of parenting that needs to be done by mom, like the pregnancy, of course, and the breastfeeding. But then in terms of after this part of the breastfeeding and the pregnancy, um, in terms of share responsibilities, and of course that these share responsibilities have an influence on this um, time, extra or not extra time, that the mother and the father has. Do you think you find some differences here that could have an impact, of course, in this balance finding?
Of course. So I work with people who are very young, who may be starting as an intern and they want to pave their way to success. And I work with people who are in between jobs. And I work with both men and women and who
Yeah.
are part of the workforce, most of which are working parents. And it's astounding to me that from all those different groups of people, they all want balance. When it comes to
Yeah.
shared responsibility, when it comes to parenting, I will say this is that women often find at times that there is an imbalance, which I understand, but there's also an expectation that is just what the women are going to do, right? Like she's
Yeah.
just going to work like she doesn't have children, and she's going to take care of children like she doesn't have a job or ambitions, right?
Yeah.
But at the core of it is, and again, to bring in another group of people, like entrepreneurs who decide to have their own business because they don't want to work a 9 to 5, but then they come to see me because they're working 80 hours a week and they're chained to their laptop and they show me pictures of themselves on their laptop on the beach, and I'm like, doesn't that overheat on your lap? How is that okay? But again, it's called kind of, if you're not careful, if you're not asking the right questions, it kind of all comes back to a place where they didn't want to be in the first place. So the entrepreneur who wanted to work fewer hours ends up working more hours, because they may have lost sight of where they were going in the first place, or the business grew too fast. And for a lot of the times, like the women who have just had a child, perhaps they don't want to admit to themselves and to other people that they might not necessarily go back to the workforce. And it's not because they've had a child. It may just be that they worked for a long time, got passed for promotion more times than the men did, and now wants to find something that's more fulfilling, or
Yeah.
wants to fulfill her role as a homemaker and as a mother for at least for a while. But the core of it is really finding safety in your choices, finding certainty in a role, and finding fulfillment, and however that may look like. I think that's so. To go back to your question, yeah, there's definitely a disparity between those two groups, but some of that disparity is imposed, and some of that disparity is also acknowledged, right, by the culture that we live or where we are in the
Yeah.
world, the amount of help that we have. But again, asking key questions and getting clear without judgment from someone else. Like I mentioned earlier, when I first worked with a coach, she just flat out told me, Carina, what do you want? And I had like a 10-second dialogue, like, is she tricking me? Like, is it okay to say that what I want? Like, but yeah, it was just very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and we are coming back to the thing that we said in the beginning, as you were saying about your father, when you ask him how do he feel before starting the game, and is everything in terms of expectations you have for ourselves, for myself, and the expectations that I think other people have towards myself.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's like you were saying, sometimes it's just we think we need to go to work because we think that other people expect us that we go to work. Sometimes it's not this is not the case, of course. Sometimes we really want to have the, let's say, woman as a mother, woman as a career person, woman as an individual, but sometimes we want to focus only on the motherhood, and depending on the culture, this could have an impact on the mother taking the first step to do this or not, depending if they think they would be accepted by their peers or their society or not, because of the expectations, as you were saying. Yeah, for sure. But when if we think on the case that of course that we need to manage these expectations, if this is the case that the woman doesn't want to go back, but on the cases that the woman in fact wants to go back but is struggling to manage everything, what tools do you think is, let's say, your best tools? Of course that this is different from person to person, but what do you think are the some of the best tools you find to balance between the woman as a mother, woman as a professional, and woman as an individual? Because of
yeah,
course that there is no, on the personal life there is the individual mother and individual woman, let's say. How do you think
yeah.
the best tools for this?
I think the first thing is to have value-driven decisions. And what I mean by that is, a lot of my clients, when I ask them, like, tell me, what are your values? What do you value in your life? They're like, oh, my health and my family. I'm like, okay, all right. Can you show me your calendar? And that's when there's a very long pause.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're not making decisions that are driven by values. We're making decisions because of expectations and everything else. But
Yeah.
it starts and it ends with us, Mafalda. I wish there was like an easier answer. It starts and it ends with us. And I hear like everyone going like, boundaries are about saying no. And I have a problem with that, and I'll tell you why. And I think partly is cultural, because growing up in Brazil and coming from a Brazilian culture, and when you respect your elders very much, and not to say that other cultures don't, but it's just that it's ingrained in Brazilian culture, you don't say no very often, and it's very hard not to say no. You know, so I really struggled with this because I just assumed that was everyone's expectations. And so it was hurting me. Like, it was hurting me in ways that it was showing up in my health. I had not one, but I had two raging, undiagnosed health conditions, because I felt everybody else's time was more valuable than mine. So the first thing to go out the window was my doctor's appointments. I would reschedule. Like, they would call me every 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, can I reschedule? Because I felt fine. And after one or two trips, when I would say, I'm kind of tired, and in my head, I'm gonna power through. It's fine. I'll just sleep on the weekend. Um, and it turned out that it was something quite serious that could have been addressed earlier, but because I allowed myself to say yes to everything else and say no to my own values, to my own health, my own family. And until I drew a line in the sand, I'm like, I'm not having this. So I think it's really important to find a way to say yes to the things that you value, and in a way that sits well with you. And that's really key. And I'll give you one example, because I actually wrote like an article with Stylist Magazine about this. And it was, how can you say no, one, as an introvert, and two, when you may have like this cultural expectation to say yes all the time. And the answers that I found for myself was to have really nicely written emails and very clear, like that, that were used as templates that I could say no to very quickly. Have, as templates, I could have my working hours clearly labeled in my email signature to manage expectations, and referring people to others. That's such a great opportunity. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I have a friend who's going to be available at that time notice. In no part of that I said no, right? But I think the key thing is saying yes to yourself first and keeping promises to yourself. We're so good at keeping promises to everybody else. And then we get mad when we don't keep our own promises, and we're like, and then you start to resent it, and then you resent yourself, and that's no way to live. So I think making value-driven decisions, checking in with yourself and what your values really are, and having a blueprint for your goals that are in alignment, are in congruence with that. I think once you have these aligned actions, then that's when transformative clarity and belief come in. Because then no one's going to mess with you. You're not going to go to somebody's birthday party that you don't want to, when you just want to be home and play with your kids. And also reminding yourself that it's not either or. It might just be not right now, because we wear all these hats during, like we play all these roles in our lives, right? And it may just be that we play all these roles, and the most important one, to be honest, is the person. Because when you laugh when you're with a friend, that's really you. When you play and you hang out with your kids and you're really having fun, that's really you. When you're in flow at work and you're doing a great job, that's really you. And it doesn't mean that you have to do all those things at the same time. And it doesn't mean that you have to, if one of those things is not giving you joy, like the work part, or there's a relationship in your life that doesn't necessarily light you up or is bringing you down, really owning that and be like, do you know what? If I'm being really honest, I need to be around other people. Or if I'm being really honest with myself, I need to really put in the time to go to the gym, because I said I value my health. And working with like someone who's going to hold you to that and remind you of your promises that you made is really important.
I totally agree, and I love that. I think is, as you were saying in the beginning, the first step is to try to find the clarity, and to find the clarity, as you were saying now, you need to understand what are your values, so you can try to understand what do you value, and then if your calendar, if your day is reflecting these values and what is important to you. Totally agree. I'd like to ask you if there is anything that you would like to share, and also how can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share that I hold free strategy calls, so we can talk. We can actually do, if you want to have a taste of what a high performance coaching session is, I'll leave the details with Mafalda so you can really experience it for yourself. And see how that sits, because like sometimes even in one session, like people just have such a major breakthrough. And I've got the free peak balance blueprint, where you can find 5 strategies actually that you can implement today to improve 30% of your productivity without having to do anything that you wouldn't normally do, right? But there's some pretty nifty tricks that I put in there. You can find me at We Are Ponderlily on Instagram, and I answer all DMs myself, and I'm known to leave voice notes to people. So if you have a question or if there's something that you'd like to share, feel free to say hello.
Yeah, thank you, Carina. I will put all the Instagram and your website on the description. Thank you again for accepting to be here with me. It was a lovely talk, and I'm sure that our listeners will enjoy a lot and will learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you for seeing the podcast. Hope this podcast help you find your balance between personal and professional life. And see you in the next podcast, and let's be super together.